it's just my sense of it is America is back, baby. It's back. And that's just the overall tone. So that's what I liked about it.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP, joined now by Richard Porter. He's a former RNC committeeman from Illinois and a contributor to Real Clear Politics. Richard, good to have you back.
Great to be back, Tom.
Okay, so, well, you're now back in Chicago, but you were in Washington yesterday and attended the some of the inaugural festivities. And, Richard, you were also there in 2017.
Yep.
And I don't know if we've talked about this on the show or not before, but I remember talking to you after 2017, and you were involved in some of those, protests in the streets that got kind of ugly. So first of all, give our listeners a little bit of background on that, and then tell us how things felt different, or if they felt different this time around.
In fact, I think I wrote a piece for Real Clear about that. There were riots going on. People don't recall that in 1617, the extent to which the Democrats simply refused to accept the results of the election. For all of their concern about election denying, people have a convenient memory lapse when it comes to what they did between the election in November of 2016 through until the inauguration day, including the so-called Hamilton electors that were supposed to vote at the at the Electoral College against Trump and so forth. But it all culminated in a big protests the day before the inauguration. Remember the pink hat crowd? And then Antifa, those thugs, were running around, masked thugs were running around Washington on the 20th and the night of the 20th. After the inauguration, we saw cars burning in downtown Washington. And then when we went back, after the parade to change to go to the ball, we were on a bus with a whole bunch of people from all over the country, Kentucky and all sorts of places. This was not, going to a ball was not something these folks did on a regular basis. And these bullies stopped the buses from proceeding to the inaugural festivities. And as a result of that, people had to get out of the bus, many of them not really warmly dressed and in their high heels, and had to walk a mile. Wow. And the first, several hundred yards of that was through a crowd of thugs that were hurling epithets and acting in a menacing manner. None of that was going on this time. That's the good news. The bad news is that the kind of the government creep, you can see in the security apparatus exactly the problem with the government, which is it has this sort of unsolvable problem of keeping someone safe. It is always going to be open things, and instead what they do is they create more and more complexity and more people. So they shut the whole city down for all practical purposes, the whole center part of the city. And they wouldn't even let the buses go to the inauguration, the inauguration festivities. I mean, it took me 3 hours to go essentially 12 blocks.
Oh my gosh.
Because you couldn't walk there. You were supposed to arrive on a bus, but then the Secret Service wouldn't let the buses move until the president moved. I mean, it was nuts. And again, the Secret Service is still being run by whoever Biden had in there, right? I mean, so it is what it is, but it was just a sign of chaos. And, my first thought was, let's bring Doge to the Secret Service,
Where's Elon? What's he doing?
And all those guys, because they have such a bureaucratic, unpractical approach to security. It's like, let's keep them secure by making sure none of the people that finance the whole thing get to actually go to the parties that they paid for. It's crazy.
Well, Elon's busy giving Hitler salutes, apparently.
That is so ridiculous.
We talked about that in the earlier part of the show, but you were there, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was watching this. I was filming it. I think I may have posted something. I didn't see anything like that. And someone said, well, it was this clip and it was apparently this little moment. But to say it is a salute in favor of something, you have to have some sign of intent that that's what someone meant.
Right.
Right. I mean, you have to have, a Hitler salute. I mean, if I go like this, and that's like my heart, and I want to wave to you, that doesn't mean it's Hitler. It could be like, hey, I feel you guys. Thank you. And the truth is, let's face it, Elon is not exactly out of the New York City Ballet, right? I mean, the guy is kind of awkward, right? So the idea that somehow we have a salute, it's literally, this is what people don't like about the mainstream media. I mean, they're making something up and they're ascribing some intent in the complete absence of anything, just to throw a slur out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's terrible. And one of my friends, posted on this. And I went back and forth with him. I was saying, it's just not right. And he's saying, well, he's supporting the AFD. Well, the AFD are not Nazis either. And so the whole idea, just because they're coming at this as being a, German first party, essentially, where, what's happened in the West is this kind of the left-wing culture was open borders. And it wasn't just the United States. It was all over, Europe. And then the left-wing media ascribes anyone who says, wait, this unchecked immigration from people and from cultures that have nothing to do with the existing culture of these countries, that somehow that is, nativism akin to Nazism. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no sign of anti-Semitism. I mean, the whole thing is like literally nuts, and it shows in a nutshell the problem with the mindset of people in the mainstream media, where they think they can throw a slur at someone with just some kind of weird association because of somehow they move their body, when there's no intent behind it to make that connection. I mean, it's one thing to say he had a Nazi t-shirt on, or he said something like, Heil, or, there was nothing else other than the fact that he's pounding his heart and then he waves,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hope that.
But listen, I've already said my piece on this earlier in the show, so I won't bore our listeners and viewers with any more. But so talk about the inauguration itself. You were there in the center. You saw, Trump signing these. I mean, it's just a raft of executive orders. What was the atmosphere like in there? What was and how was it looked like the crowd had been waiting for this for a long time.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, promises made, promises delivered. I mean, that is who that guy is. And so he said, I'm going to do these things on day one. And he signed, what was the total number, Tom? It was like over 200. It was a crazy number of executive orders. I don't even know. And that they were that prepared to do that. They at least prepared the executive orders better than they did bus routes. Okay. I guess that was more important. But look, what it shows is that there is a true cultural shift. The people have reaffirmed their control over the government through the person of Donald Trump, and they've rejected anti-American ideas like DEI. And so I think, right out of the box, no nonsense. It's sort of like the age of BS is over. And he just sort of went after issue after issue after issue. And, like, for example, revoking the security clearance on those people that lied intentionally, trying to mislead people about the likely background on that laptop. I mean, again, it was just sort of like, we're not taking this nonsense. You don't get a pass just because you're lefty. And so, I mean, I think that it was so refreshing, I think, to so many people to see the government stand up, speak firmly and with a strong voice, and stand up for America. And I think that's what we saw yesterday, for American values.
What did you make of the pardons of all the January 6th folks? Again, that's something we talked about earlier in the show, but I'm interested to get your take on that.
Well, I think the January 6th events, look, I don't think there was ever an excuse for people to be storming the Capitol, okay, period. But the enforcement of the law has to be neutral and even. And that occurred after a lot of riots associated with the George Floyd situation, where nobody was prosecuted for anything. I mean, they burned down a federal building in Oregon. As far as I know, nobody went to jail for that. We had all sorts of protests that tore up the center part of Chicago, the Loop. The Loop is still not recovered. And nobody was prosecuted for that either, as far as I can see. So to have this differential treatment under the law for law breaking is, I think, what that's ultimately about. It isn't saying it's okay to go storm the Capitol, because it isn't. But what it does say is that, and I haven't seen all the details of it, Tom, but my impression is he did make some differentiation in terms of the nature of what people did, that not everybody got treated the same. Some people who did some things that were more criminal were treated less favorably in this wave of pardons and commutations. So I think that's appropriate, actually. I think that justice ought to be tailored to the individual circumstances, and it shouldn't be, politically weighted one way or the other.
And what, last thing, and again, this is a question that we discussed amongst ourselves earlier. What did you think was the most important, most consequential thing that he did yesterday?
I just think the strength and the tone that he communicated that was unambiguous. I think about Teddy Roosevelt talking about talking softly and carrying a big stick. He has revised that. He says, we got a big stick, and I'm not going to talk softly about it. I'm not going to like wave our power. So I'm going to use our power for the benefit of America, not to the detriment of other countries, but to make sure that the playing field is ultimately going to be even, and that we don't we're not the giant that is always giving, that it's got to be a two-way street. I mean, the age of the Marshall Plan is now officially dead, right? I think that's sort of the message, which is America is self-assertive, it's strong, and in terms of its policies domestically, it's very pro-American. We're not going to be criticizing America and American history. Instead, we're going to be celebrating it. We're going to take hold of the government. We're going to shave it down, remove these elements within the government that want to shape us, and at the same time, communicate to the rest of the world that we're just not going to be pushed around. We're going to be a nation of consequence. And when we speak, it's going to be with meaning. And I think that people will take it seriously. I think you're already seeing the fact the hostages were released the day before his inauguration wasn't by accident. So, I think it's just my sense of it is America is back, baby. It's back. And that's just the overall tone. So that's what I liked about it.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it there. Richard Porter, former RNC committeeman from Illinois and contributor to Real Clear Politics. Richard, always good to have you. Thanks.
Tom, have a great day.
All right. That's going to do it for us. On behalf of Carl and Andy, I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP. You've been listening to Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM. Everybody have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.